Hello there. This is part two of my McDonald's stories. Um, First video, I didn't really go into too much detail about some of the stuff. I gave a bit of a synopsis of everything that happened in there. But for the most part, I left a lot of specific examples out. Didn't really go into too much. So I was hoping to sort of go a little bit more into detail on specific parts of the store. And one of them that I want to go into is the front of house, the cashiers. Oh, I did not realize that was open this whole time. That is embarrassing. Oh. Hope you didn't see anything in there. So I wanted to give you a little bit more of an idea. I mean, everyone knows the basics of what they all had to deal with. Their basic jobs, anyways. The fact that they take cash, cash as one payment, credit or debit card as another. The fact that the drive-through is, drive-through. That people know the regular operations of McDonald's and what they do. But I just wanted to give you a little sense of what usually happened on a day that I was there. And I'm not sure if every place has this problem. We definitely weren't as busy as some of the other places around, but our McDonald's was actually a bit of an older McDonald's, and I worked at it when it still had a play place. I know a lot of them still have play places now, but the one I used to work at just renovated about half a year ago. No, actually, yeah, about half a year ago at this point. And they completely removed the play place. And one of the reasons a lot of people came down there was because mine still had the play place. And so a lot of people were upset. But there's plenty of parks around our place. There's plenty of other stuff that they can do around our town that they can take their kids to. I know it's not the restaurant that you want to go to, and the play place is right there, and you can just sit and eat over here, but I do have to say, though, working there has changed my attitude a bit, and the front of house a lot is the reason why. And I'll tell you why. So when I first started working there, when you first start working in McDonald's, there's a bit of a trial period that they put you through, and it's quite funny because a lot of people who signed on for that job knew it got busy. Some of them I think thought, hey, it's a beginning job, so I'm not going to be killing myself. You would be wrong a lot of times. Not saying that every day you go in there you're going to die of exhaustion, don't get me wrong. But if you work during the dinner rushes or the breakfast rush, or any of those high volume times whenever people get off work, right before school, right after school, those times are the most busy and usually last somewhere in between 30 minutes for a small rush and usually a couple hours or more, maybe a couple out, 2.5 hours, I think at most is what I had one time for a rush. But then you still have steady business on top of that, so sometimes it can seem like the rush lasts a lot longer than it does. But usually there's that trial period of 3 days, And the trial period of 3 days basically consists of um, you, after you do all the paperwork and the orientation. Um, I'll actually talk about that right after I tell you what the trial period is. Um, you'll be stuck on the fry station for 3 days, is how it should go. You'll be stuck on the fry station for 3 days to get you used to the work pace and what you need to do. And actually, in there, if you've never worked McDonald's before, they actually have charts for a lot of the things, for specific times, for specific days, because obviously they've done algorithms on all this, and they know when the peak times are, they know when the low times are for the most part. Sometimes that changes. People go to McDonald's more than they usually do at specific times. Sometimes they go less at specific times. But they have charts. Like when I first got there, one chart for rush hour was about 7 medium, because there's a little rack on the back. So you'd make fries in the vat, and you'd put 7 medium fries in the back, 3 or 4 small fries, and then 3 or 4 large fries. Just so you know, because it's very fast paced there. McDonald's is very fast paced. People order. The food is supposed to be pre-done, a lot of it. So you should already have all the main stuff done, and you just need to put the condiments on the sandwich, whether or not the customer wants it. Make the bread, which goes in the toaster, takes maximum of 10-15 seconds, and you can usually get any sandwich done within like a minute at max. Usually, sometimes it takes you longer, but any longer than a minute and a half, people start wondering what you're doing, because everything's supposed to be already pre-done, unless you need to cook something. But you go through that trial period, and then after that, they'll go ahead and they'll go ahead and assign you wherever they need you. For me, I was assigned on the fries, and then after the fries, I was put onto register. Oh wait, I was supposed to tell you what the paperwork is. So before the trial period on the fries, you're supposed to go to an orientation after you get the job. McDonald's, usually you only get you get one interview, because a lot of turnover. A lot of people quit. A lot of people sign on. That's why it's a very low wage and beginner job, and it doesn't require all that much skill. So you go in for one interview if they like what they see, and they'll ask you the regular interview questions. Why do you want to work with us? How long are you planning to work with us? What's your attitude towards work? How are you as a team player? All that stuff. They'll do the interview, and if they like you, the woman I interviewed with said, "Okay, you sound like what we want, so I'll send you over to the office. I've already put your paperwork through, so you'll be hired on. You just need to go to the orientation at this date and time." I go, "Okay." I got all dressed in my nice, not fancy suit, but a dress shirt, dress pants, dress shoes for this interview. And I dressed up the same to go to this orientation. And before the orientation, what you're supposed to do for any food job is you're supposed to take a test for a food handler's license. And it usually lasts you, I believe around 2 years. So every 2 years you got to renew it. You got to know everything, what temperature everything's supposed to be at, the danger zone, 41 degrees Fahrenheit to 141, I believe it is. That's the area that mold and bacteria grows the fastest, and anything below 41 or below, and anything 141 and above, bacteria can't grow at, because it's either too hot or too cold. So you take that test where everything's supposed to be placed, like ready to eat foods and all that, raw foods, and you take that, you finish it. They usually give you a discount code. That's what they gave me. So it was like $5 to $10. I can't remember what. You go into orientations, 3 hours. You get paid for those 3 hours. You're already basically hired at this point. They're just showing you their policies. They're going to have you sign all the correct tax forms and all that, the employment forms, the waivers. You'll be in there for 3 hours. You'll do an hour and a half. They'll give you a 10-minute break, and then you'll go in again for the rest of the time. And then after the orientation, they'll give you the place you're supposed to work, and then just a date and a time. You'll show up there, and then for the first 3 days, you'll do the beginner shifts, that small period, and then you'll become fully employed, and you'll get yourself on the schedule. Now, just to let you know, before that, you have to the manager has to verify that you know all the correct procedures, like how to lift something safely. They'll have you read a booklet the first day when I went there, and they'll just, verify that you know how to read and follow instructions. And after you do that, then you'll get your job fully. So, front of house, there's cashiers, the people, I forget what they're called, the runners, the people who put the food in the bags and hand it to the other people. And then there's the person who hands it out for the drive-thru, and then there's the people who work the drive-thru window, who take the orders and take the money. In some restaurants, they're in the back near the sink, which I believe is probably the best system. And I'll let you know why when I talk about the back of the house, the kitchen. Or sometimes they're up front, connected to the main dining area, by themselves, taking orders and then cashing it out, which it's how I did it. But I would much prefer the latter, because the latter, you actually get to communicate with everyone else, and the other one, you're completely disconnected from even the front of house and the back of house even more exclusively, and you have to run around trying to figure out like what stuff is available, what can't I sell, what can I sell. If someone asks a question, and if you don't know an answer to a question, you have to run around to get a manager or another crew member who knows the answer. It's frustrating all around. And what I realized is that pretty quickly you'll realize is that a lot of people up front, unless they're really good workers and they've been there a while and they know why you're struggling, and they care that you're struggling, you're not going to get much help up front, unless what you do impacts them and what you can't do impacts them. If that does that, then they'll help you minimally, a lot if they're really a good person or a good worker. But for the most part, they're not going to help you. You're just going to have to learn some stuff on your own or ask around. Basically, the cashier, the worst thing up there, I believe, would be the drive-through window, because there's many things culminating in why I think that's the worst position in that entire store, besides if they have the completely separate person taking orders for drive-through and you're just cut off and everything. And if you get an order wrong, you get yelled at. But the drive-through window people, they basically get all the brunt of the people who do the drive-through order taking and money, but they have less control over it. So you have to work a really fast pace. Anything over like 6 minutes in McDonald's when I was there was considered way too long for an order. It got up to 7-8 minutes. It was horrible. And when it got to 10 or more minutes, someone just was not doing their job right. At my job right now, Buffalo Wild Wings, it takes me on average 10 minutes to complete one burger because I actually have to know what meat goes on there. I have to make sure everything's prepped. If nothing's prepped, I have to prep it myself, and I have to toast the buns on the grill myself. I have to personally, if nothing's pre-prepared, it takes me sometimes even longer, but I have to cook everything myself. And even when it's pre-prepared, it takes me that long because the burgers are a lot thicker. And there's a lot more to remember with these burgers too than at McDonald's. But that position, you have to work, you have to get the food order right. If you don't get the food order right, then they blame you for not getting it right, even though most of the time, you're not the one doing it unless you're working late nights. And then if the person behind them got their order wrong and they already paid it, and then they realize it afterwards, then you get the brunt of their anger, talking about, it's like, well, they made me pay for this. He rung it up this way, and then they start blaming you and everything. And then when they pay for an order, sometimes they'll decide to just be a dick about it. And they'll look at you and they'll go, this isn't what I ordered. It's like, well, I'm sorry, sir. That's what was rung up on my screen. I could solve it for you. And sometimes they'll be understanding. It's like, okay. And then about the other 40% of the time, 50% of the time, they'll almost throw it in your face. Not that they threw it in my face a lot of times. I've only had that happen to me like once or twice. But they would sometimes throw it in your face, like just, you solve it. It's like, I'm not gonna. It's like, well, can I see your receipt? And then they give you stink because you want to see the receipt just to make sure that you paid for something that either was wrong or that you actually paid for, or they actually paid for what they wanted. And then sometimes they'll try to screw you by saying, oh, I didn't get this, even though sometimes you know you put it in there, and then they'll go. And then you say, well, I already put it in there, and I know because I put it in there. They'll be like, well, it's not in here. And sometimes you'll get those people who honestly couldn't find it, and then 90% of the time it'll be those people who just want to get free food. You know, there's a lot of subjectivity when it comes to that work. That's why I hated it so much. There's a lot of subjectivity. It's like, well, I put it in there. And then if you ask for the bag back, they're like, well, it's my food. I shouldn't have to give you it back. I need this sandwich. Well, yes, but I know, but I put it in there. No, you didn't. I don't see it. Can I see the bag? No, you can't. It's my food. You know, stuff like that. And it's just, you have to fill up your station because your station has a lot of the drinks and the salad dressings. And there was a little conveyor belt behind me because the little drink machine ran on a conveyor belt that the machine moved. And a lot of times that would break down. So sometimes I had to move it by hand, or, you know, just move it slightly so that the nozzle was open so that I could actually use the damn thing, because it broke so damn often. There was one point where it was broken for almost 6 months. No one fixed it, and finally they just took it off, removed it so I could actually use it. And then one day I came in and it was back on again and barely working. I was like, okay. There was just a whole bunch to that. And then next is the runners. The runners had, I believe, that's the easiest position in the entire store, because if you're a runner, basically what you're doing is you're getting the food it's on the screen. You're getting the food for them, and it needs to be, you know, packed nicely. You need to know, like, boxes go in first. Some people I know put the fry boxes in first before they put in the big, huge boxes with the sandwiches. I'm like, if I need room, I don't know. It was just weird to me. I never put the fry boxes in first, but I knew people like that. And then they tried to put in the fry boxes and then the sandwiches, which is all right if you have smaller sandwiches. I'm not going to get into that. But they put in the fry boxes. Or the burger boxes, and they try to make it all fit into as few bags as possible. And that was an emphasis. Like, we were supposed to use as few bags as possible. We had 3 sizes of bags. We had the small bag, we had the medium bag, which was most used, and we had the large bag. And it was this big, like, 1-gallon bag that fit, like, if I were to give about 6 or 7 large fries, if you stacked them all the way across the bottom and then put 1 or 2 on the side, or 4 large sandwiches in the boxes, depending on the sandwich. That was the easiest job in the front of house, I would say. And you did that, and the runner for the drive-through put the food in there, did all that, put the napkins in there, any sauces that they needed, and then gave it to the person in drive-through, the person who's handing it out the window. And the person in front gave the bag out or on a tray, whatever they wanted, and they had to actually deal directly with the customer a lot of times. Unless the cashier wasn't taking any orders, then they would sometimes figure out what the customer needed, if they needed anything. But the runner for the lobby was usually a bit busier than the runner for the drive-through, but drive-through moved a lot faster because it's supposed to. It's drive-through. That was another thing. Sauces. Sauces were like the worst part of working that place, because nowadays sauces, you get a preset amount of sauces. For a 6-piece and a 4-piece, it was 1. For a 10-piece, it was 2, and for a 20-piece, it was 3. Some people thought that wasn't enough, so usually for the 4 and the 6, it wasn't much of a big deal, because you could, by the time you ate the last nugget, you were on the bottom of the container. Sometimes some people use way too much, and they wanted another one. It was always with the 10 and 20 pieces that they always wanted another 1 or another 2. And I usually didn't do it because I just didn't see the reason to get yelled at, because they have it to where you have to pay 25 cents extra a piece, or actually with tax. Well, I thought tax was, for the longest time, I thought tax was only after the dollar value. After you get to $1, then they add on 8% or 9% or wherever your percent is in your town. And apparently that's not true, because it said 25 cents when you rung it in, and then when you press total, it added an extra 2 cents, so 27 cents each for these packets. And you were supposed to charge them. That's company policy. It's our product. We're selling it to you, so if you want more sauces, you have to pay us. People usually didn't take too kindly to that. Every now and again, you get a person go, okay, or you get a person go, all right, I didn't know you'd charge for sauce. I'm like, sorry, that's just company policy. I usually didn't do it, but then again, I just don't like conflict, period. But I'll tell you how much my mindset has changed after working McDonald's. The sauces were one of the worst parts about that job, just because I got people like belligerent at me for trying to charge them 25 cents per sauce. I had a sauce, I usually worked nights, and one time at like 1:30 or 1:40 right before we closed, because the McDonald's I worked at only worked till 2. They opened at 5 and worked till 2 at night. So there wasn't much rest in between. And I got one person to throw sauce at me one time. One time while I was working, I was really tired, and I gave this guy a hot tea, which is basically a hot water in a cup and then a tea bag. but he decided to grab it real hard and popped the lid off, and this 200-degree water, or 150, 160, whatever it was, just plopped all over his arm, and I'm pretty sure gave him second-degree burns on the way to wherever he was going. That dude got mad at me, but yeah, it wasn't my fault. I was barely holding on to it. He's the one who grabbed it too hard and plopped it. But whatever. You might not believe me. And then the cashier. The cashier worked the front, took orders, paid them out, and every now and again, because when you're starting out, it's real confusing because there's different menus for different things, different types of items. Main menu items are already there at the main menu, but drinks were in like this shakes or the smoothies, they were in a different menu. Parfaits and other dessert items were in a totally different menu. A la carte, just items by themselves were in separate menus. It's very confusing. So especially when you're starting out, you make a lot of mistakes. I know I did. The first week, I'm pretty sure when I was doing register, one of the managers, I first started out, and I was making, by the way, when I first started, I was making like $8 an hour. I know some people look at that, they're like, well, that's a lot more than I used to make. Yeah, my parents worked part-time jobs when they were younger. I think my dad said he started out at like $5, maybe $6 an hour, maybe even less than that. But he said, he was born 60s, so that was a while ago. I know he didn't start working in the 60s, but he started working in the 70s. Right when he could. Worked at White Castle. That stuff went wrong there a lot of times. This one manager I always called on, always, because I knew his name. And if I know your name, I was going to call on you if I needed help, and I didn't know anyone else's name. I called on him so much one day that I'm pretty sure 1 out of every 8 orders I took that day was either changed in some way, because after there were a couple different things that caused a manager to have to use their code to let you change something. One was if you invalidated too many items on an order, eventually the computer gets confused for some reason, or just sets off some sort of requirements that are like, all right, well, you need a manager's code now to take anything else off. And that was really annoying, especially if these customers decided to change their minds every other menu item. That wasn't your fault, but sometimes you would fall behind, put wrong items on there, accidentally press a button, get rid of an item accidentally, and stuff just snowballed from there. But if you wanted a refund, you had to get a manager. If you wanted to override a whole order because no one had the money, you had to get a manager, or just do over the whole order, like put another order over that order. But then again, your times would run up because you were already taking an order for someone else, and you're supposed to be able to take the order in 25 seconds or less, and stuff like that. Times, especially in the front of house, were everything. Because if you got too high at times, that means you weren't efficient enough. People were waiting too long, and it wasn't working. Money wasn't flowing in and out fast enough, and product wasn't going out as fast as it should. But basically, they did that, and if something went wrong with taking orders up there, I think in some ways it was worse in the lobby than it was. Taking orders in the lobby was much easier than it was in drive-thru, just for the simple fact that you didn't have to speak through a speaker. And in the one I was working at, the speaker was right next to an intersection. So every now and again, you'd get a motorcycle decides to rev up his engine up to like 50 decibels higher than it needs to, and just blots out any sound, like in a mile radius. And these people just, sometimes they just like to make your life hard, and stuff just goes completely wrong up front. It goes wrong in drive-through. In drive-through is same thing. You take orders and you pay money. But in drive-through, if something goes wrong, it's going to take a while to get someone back there, especially if it's really busy. I remember waiting one time because I screwed up an order for a manager to come back there for like 3 minutes. That doesn't seem like long, but trust me, when you're waiting at a fast food restaurant and food going out and cars are moving, people keep coming, and you have 5 or 6 cars behind the speaker, that's when it gets real stressful, because customers start getting impatient. They start yelling at you. They start complaining that it's been 15 minutes and that they've been waiting in line and they haven't been able to make an order. I apologize, but and yeah. Basically, cashiers up front were sort of the prerequisite for doing back booth, is what the drive-through order taker was. That's where they went, back booth. That basically just meant you were there by yourself. You had to do that for a certain amount of time. They had to be confident in your skills and your money handling skills for you to go back there, because they knew that them going back there would take them away from up front. And since this restaurant moves so fast, it just wasn't optimal in the least bit. That's why I prefer it in the back with the dish pit and everything. And when you were getting the orders together, now that I've described every single position to you, when you were getting the orders together, you had to get all your food. Sometimes there were a lot of the same items. McDouble was the most is the most popular item there. It went up in price. When I first there, it was $1.09. Now it's like $1.49, $1.59, whatever it is now. And there would be like 11, 12 McDoubles in one order on front counter in the lobby, and then another 6 McDoubles in drive-through. So that's 18 McDoubles altogether. So you can see where gathering up your food would get in the way of certain people. Some people would look at the time and go, oh, yours has been up there longer, you need it more. And sometimes there was more discrepancy because the times wouldn't be that far apart. And they're like, yours is only 20 seconds faster than mine. You can afford to wait a little longer. People taking yours because they had smaller orders to get theirs out, and you need to get yours out. But the cook's giving you attitude because they're making them as fast as they can, but you need this right away. And then when you make fries, some people don't care about how many fries you need, and so they'll take their fries, their 3 large fries, that is basically one whole large vat of fries, and leave you with nothing when you need like 5 or 6 large fries and then 2 mediums. It's chaos up there. There was actually one guy that went up to front counter who usually works in kitchen. He went up to front counter to do drive-through for like he went up to the front to do drive-through for like 10, 20 minutes maybe, and he walked straight back to the kitchen and said, I'm not going back up there. It's complete chaos up there. No one has any sense of because he would make fries, look back, and they were gone because other people said, well, I need a fry. He's not taking his right now, and I'm just going to take it. And sometimes you would look and there would be fries just laying in one of the heaters, and you're like, "What? Do you need this right now?" And they go, "No." I'm like, and then you're like, "Because I need it." And then sometimes you would make a fry, go over to your station, and look back over to take the fry, and then someone else was taking your fry, and you'd have to. I don't think I've ever. I'm a nice guy, like by myself, but I don't think I've ever yelled so much at people for just taking a fry. I would look and they would be taking my fry that I just made, and I go, what are you doing? They go, well, I need this fry. I said, well, look at my screen. I need it too. I need it more than you, so give it here. They're like, no, I need it. I go, no, I need it. You can get yours after I get mine. I already have a vat down. You can wait for that. It's another minute giving my fry. I take it, put it in there, and then give it to my the person so they can hand it out. Yeah, just that. Ooh, this video's going on quite a while. I'll end this, and I'll do another part describing all of the other smaller things that the front of house does. The kitchen does it sometimes too, but it's way worse in front of house.